What's up? Welcome back. It's just another manic Monday. Alright, well, hope you guys had a good weekend. I know I did. Lots of good football games were on. Sporting the OU. Boomer Sooner, baby. Let's go ahead and get started. Get out your Chapter 16 packet. You will need a world history book today, so go ahead and grab one as well. They're in the back room. Just grab that so that when we do use it, you'll have access to it. We left off on page 21. We began talking about the war expanding in Europe. And before we get to that, I'd like to go ahead and complete our daily activity. The daily activity will be no current event. All you'll have is a date, title, date, learning target, answer. No title, no summary. The learning target for today is describe what a Zeppelin is. Zeppelin. Zeppelins. Did I just say PP? That's sick. All right. Go ahead and get that answered, or make sure you revisit it when we discuss it later. If you have not handed in your daily activities from last week, make sure you do so. You'll see if you go up to the planner here and click on that, and then you click on the month, and then you go and check out the, the agenda or the planner. It says here that you were supposed to hand in daily activities 114, 15, 16, 17, and 18. So make sure you get those handed in as soon as possible. Also, if you have not got a grade for your Chapter 16, Section 1, on the front here, down below, had someone done that for you, make sure you hand that in before you leave today. So finish everything you need to for today, but then hand that in so I can get a grade for you in the grade book. Okay? All right. Let's see. Also, don't forget to check progress. The planner here, get in the habit of using those things. Also, over here, the notifications, you'll be able to click on that and check all those things out that you might need. So, all right. Let's move on then to page 21. I'll go ahead and pull up the PowerPoint here. Before we get into the Eastern Front, let's just do a little bit of reviewing of what we've learned so far. Basically, there's going to be two fronts we discuss, the Eastern Front and the Western Front during World War I. The Eastern Front had to do with the borders of Germany and Russia, and the Western Front had to do with the borders of France and Germany. So anytime that is brought up, those are the areas we're talking about. We talked about propaganda and how that's going to influence hatreds before the war actually starts and as it's going on. So propaganda is basically trying to influence public opinion. Basically, everyone thought that the war was going to be over in just a few weeks, but because of trench warfare, it's going to take much longer. We talked about the Schlieffen Plan. Basically, Germany wanted to go through Belgium and attack France very quickly. However, that did not happen because of the First Battle of the Marne. France sent thousands of taxi cabs there and was able to hold the Germans off for quite some time. The war is going to quickly turn into a stalemate between France and Germany. Neither the French or the Germans could really do much because of trench warfare. And both sides were basically at a standstill for 4 years. So, all right, let's go ahead and look on page 21 there towards the bottom. It says the Eastern Front. Let's go ahead and start filling in these blanks. Unlike the Western Front, the war on the Eastern Front was marked by mobility. So Western Front, is going to basically be trench warfare. They're going to be lodged in these holes, in these trenches, fighting. But on the eastern front, it's going to be much different. So on the borders of Russia and Germany, it's going to be mobile. However, the Russians are not going to be very well prepared, and the Tsar there is going to take more control than he should have. And he's actually going to send soldiers to the front line with broomsticks, and he'll tell his soldiers basically, when you get to the front lines, and if you see one of your comrades down, go ahead and take their gun. So they weren't very prepared, and they are going to be defeated by Germany in the Battle of Tannenberg and the Battle of Masurian Lakes. And because of these two battles, the Russians were no longer a threat to Germany, and they're going to be able to really concentrate now on the Western Front. So, you see, this is Germany here, and this is Russia. So right along this border, that is going to be the Eastern Front, and it's marked by mobility. Russia is going to be defeated because of these two battles. The Russians were no longer a threat. Now, I told you before that Italy is going to betray the Central Powers, and they're going to move to the Triple Alliance. And so on your worksheet it says, how did the Italians betray their German and Austrian allies in the Triple Alliance? Well, basically they are going to attack Austria, and because of that they betray the Central Powers, and they move over, and Italy moves over to the Allied powers. Italy is going to join France, Great Britain, and Russia, who had previously been known as the Triple Entente, but now they were called the Allied powers. So I told you before that it will get kind of confusing, but just understand that the Triple Entente is no longer called the Triple Entente. They are now called the Allied powers. And who is a part of the Allied powers? That's Italy, France, Great Britain, and Russia. So you'll see that those are in green here. And then you're going to see the Central Powers are in red. And you're going to have Germany, Austria, Hungary, Bulgaria, and the Ottoman Empire, which we'll talk more about in a minute. Go ahead and flip the page there to page 22 in your packet. Germans defeated the Russian army and pushed the Russians far back into their own territory. So if you see back on this previous slide here, you'll see that the Germans are actually going to push the Russians all the way into Russia this far. So they're going to push them all the way back there. How many casualties did the Russians have? They are going to lose more soldiers than any other country, and they are going to have 2.5 million killed, captured, or wounded. So you can fill that in on your worksheet. The Russians basically at this point had been knocked out of the war almost completely. Encouraged by their success against Russia, Bulgaria is going to join Germany and Austria-Hungary, forming the Central Powers, and that way Germany is going to be able to refocus their forces back in the west, or on the Western Front. So that's between France and Germany. All right, real quick reading check here. How did the war on the Eastern Front differ from the war on the Western Front? So remember, what kind of a war was going on in the Western Front? That was trench warfare. So it was not mobile. There was not much movement. They basically just sat there, and that's where they stayed. You know, one would go on the offensive, then the next would go on the offensive, but no one ever really got much more land. On the east, it's going to be mobile, so a lot of movement, a lot of mobility. That is the difference, and that's how it differed. All right, the reason you needed your book, hopefully you got it. If you haven't, go ahead, go grab your book. You're going to read an article on page 528 and 529. It's the one labeled Science, Technology, and Society. And then you need to answer questions 1 and 2 that are in your workbook on page 529. Basically, this article is discussing the new technology of World War I. It's going to talk about machine guns, poison gases, fighter airplanes. Nearly 10 million people are going to die. So read through that, look at the captions, look at the pictures, and then answer questions 1 and 2. So if you want to go ahead and pause it, chicka pause, and then come on back, and we'll start talking about the Great Slaughter. Okay, Great Slaughter. The main idea, so you need to write this down here on your page 22. New weapons and trench warfare made World War I far more devastating than any previous wars. Go ahead and get that written down. The Western Front, remember the countries, the border between France and Germany, is going to have a very elaborate system of defenses, especially in regards to trench warfare. Germans and French forces each had hundreds of miles of trenches, which were protected by barbed wire entanglements up to 5 feet high and 30 yards wide. And of course, they put barbed wire there to slow the soldiers down before they actually made it to their trench so that they could shoot them. Troops lived in holes in the ground, separated from each other by a strip of territory known as no man's land. Those are a couple fill in the blank there on your worksheet. Tactics of trench warfare. Why did trench warfare baffle military leaders? Well, if you look on page 529 in your book, directly under where it says tactic of trench warfare, it says they were baffled because they had been trained to fight wars of movement and maneuver, and so this trench warfare, they were basically at a standstill, and because of that, it baffled military leaders on how they could become successful. In all capital letters there, very important that you understand trench warfare kept the Western Front from moving very much. And the last thing it says on this page, it says describe and explain the tactics of trench warfare in 3 to 5 sentences. So if you want to go to Google tactics of trench warfare, or look in your book, or use the slides here, feel free to, but you need 3 to 5 complete sentences. It goes on and says that in 1916 and 1917, millions of soldiers lost their lives. In just 10 months, 700,000 soldiers lost their lives in Verdun, and that is in France. On page 23, it says define war of attrition. You can also find that on page 529 in your book. It's basically a war based on wearing the other side down by constant attacks and heavy losses. And so the idea of trench warfare is kind of summed up in the war of attrition. They would constantly fight, they would constantly shoot, constantly rush at you, back and forth, and that's what a war of attrition is, and that's what the kind of war this is. Alright, here is a diagram of trench warfare. You can see here they have machine gun nests, they have the underground bunkers, they have the barbed wire, they have the no man's land. They have an aircraft up above, which we'll talk about here in a minute, and what they were being used for at the time. Okay, war in the air. By the end of 1915, airplanes had appeared on the battlefront for the first time in history. They are first going to be used to just spot enemies' positions. They are going to be called spy planes. They weren't used to attack. All they did was fly over so that they could identify where the enemy was. But soon they are going to use planes to attack ground targets. And Germans are going to use airships called the Zeppelins to bomb eastern London. So there on your packet it talks about what were planes first used for. That's basically just to spot the enemy